Good morning and welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. My name is Lincoln Shrike. I was supposed to be joined today by Gordon Mack. It's been a whole fit to get this organized, but we have Kevin Soley coming in from the bullpen. It's Thursday, July 2nd. The email, flotrackpodcast@gmail.com. Kevin, I know you were surprised that you were going to have to join the show today, but how are you?
I'm ready. I'm ready for a action-packed 30 minutes. We're going to squeeze as much in here as we can. It's a pleasure to be with you, Lincoln.
Yeah, all right. I didn't expect to see you this morning, but happy to have you. We do have just a little bit of news, and we're going to make this a shorter episode. Usually when the episodes are shortened, it's because I'm getting construction work done in my backyard, or I'm feeling bored and ready to move on to my 15th cup of coffee. But we're in a time crunch, so we'll get rolling with the news. First bit, we have USATF has changed course. They have announced that they're going to allow 2020 marks to qualify for the 2021 trials. Shouldn't impact any of the elite names who will actually be competing for Olympic spots. But for some of those athletes who are just hoping to get a shot to compete at the Olympic trials, I think it's a pretty big deal if they are fit right now and can find a meet and can get a qualifier. What was your reaction to this bit of news?
Yeah, the key bit there is, can they find a meet? Can they take advantage of the fact that USATF is now opening up the window? Because I don't think this was ever about the top tier of American track and field, the Bowerman Track Club, if you will, trying to figure out, man, how can we get Olympic trial standards? I think if they're not getting Olympic trial standards, even in the small window that used to be available in 2021 or December 2020, then there was bigger problems on the horizon. So this is more about that bottom tier of trials qualifiers, but the issue still remains is, well, what meets are they actually going to go to get these fast times? The unresolved issue, I think, still is, what's World Athletics going to do? Is World Athletics going to open up their window back up? Because that would have an impact, because then you're talking about actual Olympic Games qualifiers, which has a whole host of ramifications. So I'm still waiting on that decision, or if they just stand pat and say, nope, we're keeping things shut down in terms of qualification, in terms of world rankings until December.
It feels like to me the pressure may be applied a little bit more once we start, assuming we start these, official Diamond League meets like they're going to have starting in August in Monaco, where big boy and big girl marks, you would think, are going to be thrown down, and that's when I think we'll start to see renewed scrutiny on World Athletics if they're not going to seriously allow Olympic game qualifiers up until whatever it is, December 1st. So like you've said in the past, and I agree with it, I think this is all fluid. USATF showed it can be. I know they're separate from World Athletics, but World Athletics, given enough pressure, will flip their script as well. So I don't think anyone is seriously concerned about this rule. I mean, we talk about it because there's not a ton else to talk about. But if there really is a solid track season, I could see the World Athletics, of course, saying, yes, we'll accept these marks. Now, the question will be, are they going to backdate it? Are they going to be like, okay, going back to June 1, we'll accept him? Or is it only going to be from the start of the Diamond League? Or will they truly not accept them at all? There's always going to be little controversies involved with anything, it seems like, in track and field. So we'll see. But most of the important players already have Olympic standards, so it's not a huge deal. But I don't know. I think if someone like Elise Cranny ran 14:48, that was her Olympic standard. You would assume she could run under 15:10 again. But you never know if injuries pop up the rest of this year and she doesn't get healthy or something until the spring of 2021. I mean, it could be an issue for a few athletes for sure. So it's something to be looked at.
Yeah. And that's it. You never know what's going to happen with injuries. You never know what's going to happen with, well, maybe it gives them the option to explore another event, right? And then, man, Cranny goes back into the 1500 and she's even better in the 1500. I'm not saying that's exactly going to happen, because 14:48 is 14:48, but you hear athletes talk all the time about the luxury of having options and being flexible, as opposed to pressing and doing these last ditch qualifying efforts. I was interested to see that USATF, they backdated this to April. So basically, if you ran any meet during this time, or if you've recorded any mark during this time, then it's going to count, which
that's good.
I think is it. Yeah, it's not So, oh, this one group did it. So now all of a sudden you're letting these marks count. Well, what about these other ones? They're reflexively going back. And do certain groups have advantages here because they're able to pull together time trials with their elite teammates? Yes, but those groups have advantages with everything within the
Yeah,
sport of track and
yeah,
field. They're funded by a
yeah.
multi-million dollar they're funded by multi-million dollar shoe companies. They can go to altitude camps, they can get into meets and have heats and travel around the world whenever they want to. So this isn't the only time when the top tier of professional track and field has more advantages over that next group of people who are just scrambling to get into the trials.
Yeah, and the same logic applies to worldwide. Certain countries have certain advantages, and that's kind of over other countries. So that's
Yeah.
if that logic is being if that realization is being made by USATF, you'd think it would be made by World Athletics and say we're not trying to make. What's the point of making an egalitarian system for qualification if these advantages exist in non-pandemic times? Again, it's not something I'm overly concerned about, but it would just be nice if we could just say, if we're going to have track, just let there be Olympic standards. If you're going to allow there to be world records, you're going to allow for records to be made, then you need to allow for standards to be
Yeah.
made. It seems pretty simple. I know I understand their logic, but I think their logic is now dated based on the events that are coming up on the schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to say, hey, Diamond League, open for business, but none of these meets count, and we're worried about athletes having a level playing field because of travel restrictions. But come to
Yeah,
our meet in
yeah, yeah,
European city X or Y. It's tough to have both sides of that.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I assume it's something's gonna change, and I think World Athletics has shown that it can be nimble and will hopefully change their minds
Yeah.
on it. But they've got other things going on right
Yeah.
now, so I can understand if they're counting on Russia to dig them out of a economic hole. So and it's not happening right now. They haven't received their payments.
How much does Russia owe? Did we find out yesterday? How much
Yeah,
money is this?
6.31 million dollars. So again, that's a serious line item for World Athletics as they operate out of a deficit. And now I will
Yeah.
say, if you're counting on Russia to keep you afloat, that maybe is not your best course of action. And yeah,
Well,
it's tough.
within the track and field world, I just ever since that initial suspension with the McLaren report and the documentary and all that followed is every headline's like Russia had this deadline to complete this step and didn't do it. Russia had this next deadline to do this thing and yeah, they got half of it done and then they didn't get the other half. So owing $6 million, is this a fine? Can you tell me more about this $6 million and where it
Yeah,
originates from? Because in track and field terms, $6 million is a lot of money.
it
That's
is.
not just chump change. We're not talking about the MLB owners here who are going to cancel a season over what they could find underneath their iPad. But what's the where is this money coming from? Is it
Right.
is this actually a fine or is it entry
Yeah. Let
fees?
me.
Did they do the late
No, it's.
entry fee option so many times for World Athletics that they rang up when they went to check out of their
Mm,
online race registration form that they had the $50 option checked for everybody instead of the $25 option because they did not do the early bird. Did they pick up their packet late and get assessed a fine? Is that it? Did
you
they
could
get the
ar-
high tech?
you could argue
They
that.
got they got the high tech T-shirt instead of the cotton one, and then just never paid anybody back, and have been doing it for years and years and years and years.
It's just added up. It's not that. 5 million of the 6.31 is a fine.
Okay.
I would assume for missing these deadlines, and then 1.31 is basically the reimbursement World Athletics is asking for. In all these charges they've assumed they've taken on by it with the doping review board and Russian task
Oh,
force. Don't ask me what the difference of those two things are. We got a lot of fancy words, but the point is, World Athletics not going to start, the ANA process as it stands while they're still owed this money. So I listen.
when is
I've
Russia coming
long
back?
Yeah, I
When are
don't
we
know
going to
what
see
they're what
Russia
is their
back?
we just don't know what Russia's ever up to. But you just look you we learn to expect the worst when it comes to Russia. I don't know what their goals are. Do they want to have a track and field program ever again, or do they just want to compete, have everyone compete in Moscow and across the country? I don't understand. I mean, you know, are they trying
If
to
they
figure out
want
how
it,
they're going to be able to cheat again? Because it's just none of this makes sense. It's like they don't even care. I don't.
well, that latter point, it really seems like if they wanted to get back in, they've been given chance after chance after chance to get back in, and you feel for athletes like Sergei Shabenkov, right, who
Mm-hmm.
are or some of their other winners that have been going to world championships. And yes, they get to win and they get their moment, but it probably feels lessened because they know how they're viewed globally. And they're also standing up on a podium listening to the ANA song instead of the other one. So I feel for those individual athletes, but their federation is completely letting them down because it seems
Yeah.
they're more interested in proving a point than they are interested in abiding by the WADA code. That's how it's always felt to me.
Absolutely. It's bizarre. It's bizarre to me, and yeah, I think I do feel for the athletes that have been successful in the ANA era. Lassiskine, obviously the best high jumper in the world.
Mm-hmm.
She's
Sidorova in the
someone.
pole vault.
Yeah, it's gonna people that are affected by this who have done no harm and are just being negatively impacted by their governing bodies continued corruption, continued denial. It's a
Yeah.
shame because there are good athletes in Russia, even without a state sponsored doping program. But they all get kind of lumped in when the governing body of Russian athletics continues to operate in bad faith.
Well, and now they're going a step further, right? And they're putting restrictions on ANA athletes. Now it's like, okay, not only
Yeah.
are you not able to compete for Russia, and not only do you have to jump through any of these hoops, now you can't even do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're looking at a scenario where you're not even able to compete, even if you are able to meet all these benchmarks that they put in initially because they wanted to separate the athletes from the country, and they wanted to say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
look, we understand you do not work for the federation, you represent the federation, but you are not in charge, you should not have to pay the cost of all these mistakes that have come before you, which I think was the fairest way possible to adjudicate it, because there did need to be some punishment for the huge malfeasance that was taking place with the federation. But now that looks to be going away, and it looks to
Mm-hmm.
be, well, now we have no other choice. We have no other leverage than to start pulling the card of the ANA folks as well too.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
then that really sucks because this is the prime
Yeah.
of their career.
It kind of strikes me, and I could be wrong, but with what Russia's doing right now by not taking these steps to get back in compliance is like, if we're going to be stuck in the mud with this process, we're also going to bring down these ANA athletes with us. Like, don't think you're better than us. We're going to drag you through this as well. I don't know if that's the
Yeah,
case
yeah.
at all, but it's kind of like, well, we're in trouble and you're still out there competing and, willing to get medals, be on the podium while not representing Russia. We're going to take that away from you because we don't agree with this. So you're still Russian.
Mhm.
Don't forget about that. I have no idea if that's the case. That's a little bit what this feels like because they're not making these payments, and now these ANA athletes are going to have to you know they're going to have to decide what's their loyalty. Are they going to say, I'm going to fight for myself and go against the Russian machine publicly? Or am I going to, stick in line and basically not say anything? It's a challenge to them, right? It's a challenge. Like, is Shabenkov going to
Yeah.
come out and condemn Russia? That's in the past is not a good idea, obviously.
But
So,
what's his path back to competing if he does do that? Is he going to change allegiances? Is he going to sit out and do a transfer of
yeah.
allegiance? Like he's really stuck now, and
Hmm.
so there's like you're talking about with Lasaskine, they're really stuck now because it's not
Hmm.
like World Athletics is asking them to do something else, and if they do that thing, then they're able to speak free and clear. They're attached now. Their fate is completely linked as it was before. They had a moment where they broke off when they allowed them to be ANA athletes. But if we get, and all of this has been pushed a little bit and hasn't become that big of a story because everything got pushed to
Yeah.
2021. So it's not being brought up as much. But what could they do? What more can these athletes do that were already in that pool so that way they can compete in the Olympics? And they're being used as fodder on both sides of this thing.
Right. Yep.
And
Yeah.
I mean,
They're
obviously, World Athletics is in the right here on this one, but they're the pawns, right? They're the
yep.
leverage on both sides, because they're trying to call each other's bluff. Hey, okay, you didn't like competing, you weren't able to compete under your flag. Now, no athletes from your country are going to compete. How's that? That's what World Athletics is saying to Russian Federation, and Russian Federation seems to be saying, we'll call your bluff and say, well, no, you're not actually going to keep out these gold medal winning athletes from competing, even if they're just running in white jerseys and listening to the World Athletics anthem instead of the Russian theme song. And it's at an impasse, and man, it's got to be incredibly frustrating if you're one of those athletes.
Right. I mean, they're like the kid stuck in the middle of a divorce. I mean, it's obviously different than that. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't see World Athletics budging on this. I mean, Russia has obviously shown that they are willing to not listen to the rules, to put it mildly. So we'll see. Maybe it is World Athletics that ultimately says, you know what, like these athletes
Well,
have been willing to compete and play under our anthem and do all this. Maybe it's not fair to them. And then but then at the same time, you don't want to give any leverage to Russia. So it's like you said, very tough situation with these kind of so-called innocent athletes at the center of it. It's a shame. And yeah, the real loser of this, unfortunately, is the athletes who were just trying to compete for medals, regardless of what jersey they're wearing.
Yeah, and maybe they do something. World Athletics gives them super ANA status and say, okay, these athletes are good. They're going to stay in this separate testing pool, and they're good for the rest of their careers. But if you want anybody else coming up ever to compete under ANA or under your Russian flag, these are the stipulations that need to be made. Because correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, we were in Doha at the World Championships. I think public opinion on this is with World Athletics. I didn't hear too much clamoring on the other side about that they were being mistreated by the governing body here. So I think World Athletics, and they're not always in the right on the things, but if they are in the right, why wouldn't they just stay on the right? You know, we should check in with our guy who we met in Doha, our guy Constantine.
Yeah,
Shout out.
I follow him on Twitter, and he had a quote. He quote tweeted the news, and he said, his tweet. Constantine, a Russian journalist who has a podcast, go check it out. I forget the name of it, but his quote tweet to this announcement where World Athletics effed up now officially. So a little bit lack of contact or a lack of, don't know exactly what he's referring to. If he's mad at World Athletics, if he's mad at his own federation, but he's right. It's effed up. Yeah. So I agree with him there.
Across the Runnerverse is the podcast. It's all in Russian. So if you speak Russian, that's your podcast. Because I typed it in and downloaded it when we were there. And then he's like, but it's in Russian. I was like, I'm going to give you a download every week. You could just be saying horrible things about me and Lincoln the entire time. I'm still going to give you a download.
Yeah. I mean, I would, in all seriousness, I'd be interested to listen to this because I know when we were in Doha, he had interviews with Lasiskene and, he's had Shabenkov on his show and all this. So I'd be genuinely interested in what they had to say. Now, are they going to, if they were going to talk, they're probably not going to come out and blast the Russian Federation, but very interesting to hear what those athletes who are, dramatically affected by this would have to say, but we shall see.
Definitely. Get on it, Constantine. Get those interviews. Get those downloads up.
I'll try to dust off my Russian language book. Okay. One other bit of news we'll get to. A couple weeks ago, maybe last week, I was wondering what are pro marathoners going to do with basically no marathons to look forward to in 2020. Maybe this event would have happened even if there were marathons. But we do have another remote match race, and it's between two top marathoners in the U.S., Jared Ward and Jake Riley, going to race a July 4th firecracker 5K, if you will, remotely. Ward in Provo and Riley in Boulder. Going to be on Instagram. I think I'm going to check this one out. I'm going to be interested to see how they pull this off on road courses. It's not going to be completely equal on both sides. You get a feeling one course will be easier than another. Who do you like in this dream matchup, Kevin?
I want to say Riley, but I mean Riley's younger. Am I right there? My feeling is that Riley's younger.
Maybe not by much. They're both 31 or 32, I thought, right?
Okay. I mean Riley's. You know what? No. Jared Ward didn't run well at the Olympic trials. He's probably ready to go. He's itching to get out there. I'll go Ward on this one. Okay. I was leaning Riley because I thought of the age, but I also thought, hey, he's ran better at the marathon, but this is a 5K, so it does not matter at all in terms of what your potential is as a marathoner. You know what's going to be incredible here is the commentary. It's because it's going to be done by their coaches.
Right.
And Ed Eyestone and Lee Troop can both bring it. I might just this will be the rare track race where I tune in just for the commentary, except for the races you call, of course.
Of course. Yeah, those guys are a tier below me, but who's not? No, I'm just kidding. Absolutely. Ed Eyestone's called many a marathon. I'm not as familiar with Lee Troop's work, but I'm fascinated to see how these guys are not going to trip over each other. I assume they're going to be live at the same time, like a split screen type situation. Are they going to pass the ball back and forth, saying, Eyestone's going to be like, oh, Wardy's looking really good, and Lee Troop in his Australian accent, right? Going to, be calling him out.
Riley looks better.
Yeah. So fascinated to see how that goes. The numbers we have as far as their 5,000 days, neither of them obviously have eye-popping marks. Riley is a 13:32 best, Ward a 13:34. Of course, they've been focusing on the roads for a long time, but they're neck and neck. If you wanted to side with the Ward camp, you have a basically 800 feet of elevation that Ward is going to have the advantage of in Provo, but relative to Boulder. Don't know how big of a difference that will make. We don't know the layouts of the course. I feel like I'm going to go with the guy who got second, though, at the Olympic trials. Now what has it been?
February.
4 months. 4 months and some change. I'm going to go with Jake Riley on this one. A little bit faster PR. He's shown to their last race. He was considerably better. I know this is a 5K, but I think I'm going to stick with him.
Should we do a remote watch of their remote watch? Because now I'm on Team Ward and you're on Team Riley, so now we're invested in this. Ward's got that new shoe. I guess he had that shoe at trials, didn't he?
Did he? Okay.
The Saucony Super shoe. I don't know. It's gonna come down to courses, I think. Yeah. I think it's gonna come down to courses. But I think Jared Ward, right, didn't have a good race in the trials, but other than that was very consistent. And he seems like a guy who can run a good solo time. So I think he will win, and I think he'll run 14:02.
We're throwing out times. Okay. 14:02.
This is on the road, right? This is on the road. They're not running on the track.
On the roads. It's on the roads. That's pretty quick. I'm feeling closer to 14:20. I'll go 14:18.
Okay.
I don't know why. That just feels like the number. I had a pretty good guess. I forget not too long ago on something, which shows me, which breaks my streak of never being right about anything.
You predicted the over under. It was the Ingebrigtsen Road 5K.
I said
you set the over under at the exact second, right?
Yeah, it's pretty good. So that breaks my trend of being incredibly wrong about other predictions and shows that now I fixed that part of my game and I'm ready to make this right. Yeah, so I'm going to go with Riley 14:18. They are raising money for COVID-19 it says caregivers, so I assume healthcare workers and those who are
Mm.
treating the patients, of course, affected by the coronavirus. So it goes to a good cause. Not sure what time this goes off, but you can enjoy this with your hot dogs, hamburgers, or if you're me, your tofu dogs and tofu burgers, Kevin, on July 4th.
We have an email I wanted to read. I'm going to
All
ignore
right,
that.
get
I'm
to
going to
it.
ignore that and read this email. So we got one from Terry in Beaverton. He says he has no insight into the Pete Julian team name, but here's a guess. You have to think they're going to use the name Blue Ribbon Sports or some version. Insert track
Ah,
club, insert track team, insert athletics. Blue Ribbon Sports was the original name for Nike. Maybe something related to the swoosh. You can't use Pre, but any other athlete besides Phil Knight or possibly Bill Dellinger is not really recognizable enough. Dellinger could be honored, but he was never 100% a Nike guy, i.e., there was a time when Oregon athletes wore Adidas. That's right. You could see them considering Jeff Hollister a few years ago. Oregon Project wore red, white, and blue jerseys as a tribute at Millrose. Do you remember that? I remember that when Jeff
I
Hollister
do.
passed and they had
Yep.
the special jerseys. Jeff is important in the Nike history. However, it doesn't have recognition outside of the company. You could possibly go uh, with something to do with the Cascades or Pacific Northwest. And he says you can't do Beaverton Bobcats, which was my idea, because there's a neighborhood school a few miles from the campus, and those fifth graders will kick your butt. Go Bobcats. He says Mo Farah's daughter is a Bobcat alum. Lastly, there's a pizzeria close to Nike called Papa's. It's crappy pizza, but the marketing concepts are endless. So there you go.
Oh,
I don't know if you heard.
I
Did you
would.
hear Gordon and I discuss this? Did you know what he's
I,
referring
I
to?
I watched the clip and it did the pizzeria didn't show up, I don't think, in the clip. So I missed that part. But I'd be
We
open
just
to
thought it'd
that.
be
It's a little
funny. We just thought it'd be funny if it was like they didn't actually have like track club or anything. They just became like Team Beaverton Pizzeria, and that
Mhm.
was and they just did hyper local advertising for even like the World Championships. Like in
Mhm.
all the post race interviews, they just plugged a pizzeria in Beaverton. But then I also
Yeah.
thought they should come up with something that sounds like a T-ball team
Yeah.
from fifth grade, Beaverton Bobcats.
Right. I mean, I feel like Phil's Knights is up there with that as far. I mean, it obviously has
Mhm.
meaning to the president of Nike or whatever, CEO of Nike. But are we sure they're trying to come up with a name? They've had a few months now. Maybe they're just trying to lay low. I
Yeah,
don't know, but
there's
we're
been no
obviously,
need.
yeah. Um,
Blue
you would
Ribbon Track
think,
Club, though, I could see Blue Ribbon Track
yeah,
Club or Blue Ribbon Athletics. I think,
athletic,
I think that
yeah.
might be the clubhouse leader. I think Terry's on to something here,
Hmm.
because I have seen that more and more on shoes and product and people talking about it. I could see
Okay,
that.
so yeah, the
It's
issue
old
is if
school.
they're well, the thing is though, if Nike is like does some old has some old school merch out there already, and you see other Nike athletes wearing it, if they all of a sudden name a team after that, like people on the Bowerman Track Club who have blue ribbon
They got to give it all back.
clothing,
The
they're
first
like,
thing
well,
is
I'm
you got
not
to
on the
get all your
blue
gear back.
ribbon. Yeah. Um,
It's like Elijah
maybe the
Manigault who
waffle.
bought the Nike Oregon Project shirt when he was in Eugene, and then we thought he joined the Nike Oregon Project. No, I just bought the shirt.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah,
Hey, it's a collector's item now.
yeah.
Maybe the waffle iron track club.
Collective.
Yeah, yeah, name it
If you end
after
things
like
in
a paint.
collective, it'll sound
The
very Oregon.
collective.
If you put
Mm-hmm.
if you collective, yeah. So Waffle Iron
Mm-hmm.
Collective would sound very
Yeah.
Oregon. A running
I'm
co-op, if you will.
I'm up for anything that doesn't have quite the intimidation factor. Let's have a more welcoming name and not a skull. Like let's do a newborn baby. Can we? As that'd be the complete opposite of the Oregon Project. Just a cute baby as their logo. That'd be
Yeah,
much more welcoming than the previous edition.
like a teddy bear, something like that.
Right,
Just
right. I
yeah,
mean, cute, but it gets the job done.
yeah. I'm interested to see what they do because it seems like it would be a waste not to brand it and market it, and
Uh huh.
the international implications are big too, right? You have an athlete from Australia, an athlete from Germany, an athlete from Netherlands, an athlete from Japan, and
Yeah.
obviously athletes from America.
Hmm.
I would think you'd want to do something with that because there are big track communities in those countries.
Yeah. It's weird. It's still weird to think Galen Rupp's not a part of this group anymore, right? It's like that. That's strange to
He's on
me.
the Mike Smith Track Club.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
that would be a collective.
Yeah. That
That
would
would be
be.
the collective.
Yeah.
The collective of one, because the collective
Yeah.
inside your mind is
There you go.
the most important thing.
I like that.
I haven't heard him talk in a while. I feel like my Mike Smith's getting rusty. I need
It
new
is.
material, new things to talk about.
Definitely need new material. He needs his own YouTube or something. I need him chiming in on the various issues of the day. All right, so I've heard you have a deadline you need to run. I can't imagine. Are you doing house demolition? What's going on with you?
Yeah, some form or fashion. I'm staying busy.
Got it.
So
Got
yeah,
it.
I did not know I was going to be doing this. So 30 minutes though, 30 solid minutes. Uh, it was an enjoyable time, Lincoln. So
Yeah.
thank you for having me on your podcast
All
today.
right. All right. Well, we will see everyone, I think, tomorrow. Until next time, email the show, flotrackpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll see you on the flip side. Okay.